that we partner with an organisation called Restored, which is providing a Christian response to violence against women. So I asked them to come and give us an update to kind of share with us what's going on out there and how we can stand with them. So I'm going to hand the stage over to them. This is Peter Grant and Natalie Collins coming up. Over to you. Have you got microphones and stuff?
Thank you very much. Well, this time last year was the global launch of the joint campaign between CVM and Restored called First Man Standing. So we're really here to give you an update. And we wanted to launch First Man Standing because we were appalled by the figures that 1 in 4 women in the UK are affected by violence by a male partner. And we felt actually there was a place linked to the code, linked to all that CVM stands for a new kind of man willing to stand up and to speak out on these issues, to stand against that, to be a good father, to realize that it's 1 in 4 of our daughters, of our workmates, of the people in our church who are being affected. And I love that picture that John had last night of his granddad standing up at the Middlesbrough game and cheering the Everton goal. And it's that kind of courage we're looking for. Are you willing to be the first man in your family, in your club, in this tent, to stand up and to say, actually, this has got to stop. We want to change. We don't want our society to go this way. That's what First Man Standing is all about. Now, over the last year, we've been calling men to respect all women, to challenge other men, and to sign up to the pledge. And we've seen some amazing reactions. We've had over 350 men sign up to get the regular emails from Baggy Collins, who's at the back on the sound desk, very much part of our team. We've seen work take off with the White Ribbon campaign, the secular campaign, encouraging men to wear white ribbons on the 25th of November. And we're producing some resources for them this year, for churches. And if you guys are linked, if you're chaplains to soccer teams or rugby teams, we can talk afterwards about how you can link up with them. There's lots of great things been happening. But perhaps the things that have touched me most have been the personal stories, and I just want to share a few of those with you. Like a doctor who was here last year, who was coming across domestic violence in his work, so took the initiative to go for training so that he'd be better equipped to respond to the women who were coming to him for help. Like the man we heard about this morning, a perpetrator of violence who was here last year, who was abusing his wife, who heard Natalie's story and was so touched by that that he went back and he got help and he's turned his marriage around, and that woman is no longer abused. I'm just so encouraged by that. And ordinary blokes, a bloke who wrote to us who said he saw a woman outside his office window who was being beaten up by her boyfriend. And there was a plate of glass between him and what was going on. So he couldn't get to them, but he started banging on the window to get this guy to stop. And I think he was so shocked by this guy causing all this fuss and attention that he stopped beating up his girlfriend. And then in February, if any of you follow Carl's blog, we were at a CVM regional day. And we've been raising this stuff, and we were saying men have got to stand up and speak out about this stuff. And Carl and Dino, many of you know Dino who were there, on the way home got to a tube station in central London. The tube doors opened, and there was a guy on the platform being extremely aggressive to a woman who he'd pinned against a wall. And you must read Carl's blog if you haven't seen it, just what was going through his mind about the possibilities of intervening in that situation, what the consequences might be. But we've just been saying that day, you can't stand aside when you see this stuff. And I want to take my hats off to Carl and Dino as two brave men who actually intervened in that situation. It was being captured on camera. There were station announcements. The guy was being warned to stand off, but he certainly wasn't going to. And Dino, who you will remember as quite a substantial presence, and Carl, who's no mean man himself, stood between them and basically diffused that situation until someone came and took that man away. And just for me, it was a picture of how God works when perhaps we're prompted to this stuff for the first time, and then suddenly it's in our faces and we have to do something about it. So Carl, thank you for being a first man standing. We appreciate that. Then just this week, perhaps closest to home of all, just speaking to a guy I met on Wednesday who said, actually, I've been looking at this stuff And then someone at work came up to me and said, I'm going home to give my wife a good beating. And the guy was just shocked. This came out of nowhere. And he just suddenly said, I've got to say something in this situation. And he said something like, well, I hope you're joking, mate. And he got into a conversation with this guy about what was going on and the kind of language he was using and the kind of attitudes he had. And I guess all of us can imagine those times during the year, perhaps, when these things have come up. We've been called to be first men standing. And it takes real courage. It's about what being a CVM man is all about. And that's why we're standing here this morning.
I'm going to read an extract from an email that I received from a woman sharing what had happened to her. And we have numerous emails like this one, and every event we go to, we speak to women who have got stories like this. And if you were here last year, you'll have heard my story. And this is some of what Abigail said to me. Dear Natalie, my name is Abigail. I live in Australia. I was a victim of domestic violence. I left John 1.5 years ago. Despite the time that has lapsed, I am still regularly triggered into fear and pain. I angered all the Christians in my church when I broke off the relationship. Then when I went to the police and made a statement, they tried to emotionally blackmail me into dropping the charges. They didn't believe John had been violent towards me other than it was a slap, and he is very sorry. Which is rubbish. John tried to suffocate me on one occasion. The day I left him, he had dislocated my shoulder by throwing me against a wall. I finally opened up to a lady, a Christian counselor at the church, about what had happened to me. She told me that I was to blame because I had sex with John before marriage. She told me I was weak for not leaving him the first time when he threatened to smash me. Unsurprisingly, my attendance to church has been poor these last few months. John also financially abused me. I worked and he didn't. He forced me to keep him financially through manipulation and threats. The attitudes of the police were horrifyingly painful. They told me, John is a really great guy. You must have done something to provoke him. After the first time John assaulted me, we went to see a psychologist together who didn't believe he had done any more than a slap and blamed me in court for John's violence. My friendship group halved. John's friendship group increased. I could go on. However, this is excruciating to write about. As we continue to talk and as we go through this day, we're doing this because of women like Abigail, because of women like me, and for your daughters and sisters and mothers. And I'm going to pass you back to Peter to talk a bit about the vision of First Man Standing.
Okay, so what are our plans for 2012? Well, we want to increase the 350 good men who've already signed up, and we'd really want to encourage you, if you haven't signed up to First Man Standing, to do so. We've got a stall over there in the other tent, in the mess tent. Do sign up for First Man Standing. Baggy's going to keep sending out those emails. We want to encourage good men to cut down the space in which this kind of stuff can happen, to change the culture that makes this acceptable, to be good men, men of courage, standing up. I want to produce a viral resource to get into the hands of every married man in the world, highlighting that some of the Bible verses aimed at men. We're very good at reading the Bible verses aimed at women sometimes about what they should be doing, and it's good if we can read the ones of what we're called to do. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and laid down his life for her. We've had a word of prophecy too, a rather uncomfortable one, that we should engage with dangerous men. And we really want to think through this year, what would it mean to have a response to perpetrators, a Christian response, a church-based response? What would we have to do that in a more systematic way? And we'd really appreciate your help for that. But most of all this weekend, we want to produce a video that you can use in your men's groups to introduce these issues. And we're going to be going around with cameras this afternoon and tomorrow, trying to get some clips from people, just some comments on what it means to respect women, to challenge men. So if you want to come and have a little interview with us, get on our video, that would be great. And at the seminar this afternoon, you'll be hearing more about that. We've also got chances to go internationally. We've got an opportunity to work in Latin America on a campaign to challenge machismo culture. And it'd be great to get some CVM resources into those situations. And Cambodia, there's just so much going on there, and I think lots of potential for us to work together, thinking about what First Man Standing looks like in those contexts too.
We're also working more broadly with the UK church, and if any of you are church leaders or have places of influence within your church, it'd be great to speak to you about training that we can offer, resources that we have available to equip the church to be a safe place when women have experienced abuse. And during the seminar, we'll also be handing out a resource CD with a presentation, videos, and all sorts of stuff that you can use with men's groups. And to finish, I'm just going to read you another email from Abigail that shows the difference we can make if we stand up and choose to challenge abuse. Dear Natalie, I'm writing to say that I'm out of the tunnel of darkness that follows abuse. As you have written to me previously, it doesn't mean that there won't be anything more I'll need to deal with or revisit, but for the record, it is finished. Thank you, Natalie. Your words have been a lifesaver, and that is more literal than I would care to elaborate on at this point in time. I am living on the Thailand-Burma border, working with the Burmese refugees and a rehabilitation service coordinator. My pain has given me strength and resolve to do what I do now. God is the master of redemption. I've been working here since October last year, hence the reply. It has been full-on busy. As in our previous emails, I remember the unbelievable and downright debilitating pain I was in. I can hear myself being truthful, but still shielding a little from exposing the depth of despair I was in. I wanted to be okay and told myself and others constantly that I was and is. But in reality and in hindsight, I can honestly say I almost killed myself in June 2010. I just didn't want to alarm others by saying so. It was a horrible time in my life. For 3 days in June, I thought that God was dead, that he really had died on the cross and not risen. I didn't believe a God could exist, because surely if a God existed, he would take this pain away, like he said he would in his word. But I had so much to learn. When we started emailing each other, I was only just out of the darkest of dark nights. I was at about 3 a.m. The sun hadn't even started coming up yet. Thankfully, I was well enough to write to you and start the process. When I finally realized I was not responsible for my ex-partner's violence or his demented interpretation of his violence, I felt relief, amazing relief. Natalie, I can't even begin to tell you how free I am right now. God has fully placed into me something wonderful. I'm living and working in the jungles of Thailand. Now I really appreciate small things, silly things, and then really grand things like communicating with someone non-verbally, something really powerful, or a joke shared between me and another. This is a new life I lead and made possible by the freedom God gives. I realized that my ex-partner no longer has any control over me. He has no bargaining power. I am free of his control. Reality now reigns in me. Love, Abigail.